Anastasia Golovishkina. How do you walk through life with a long and hard to pronounce last name like that? I want to thank her for the invitation and for her opening remarks. And I got a chance just a little bit when I walked in here to ask her a little bit about her background and how she came here when she was 6 years old from Moscow. Her mom and dad came to a country where it's free, chance to be able to live the American dream. There's no place anywhere in the world ever in the history of humankind than the United States of America. And for all of our challenges, problems, imperfections, this is the best place that you can ever ask to be in. And I know what that's like because as the son of an immigrant father myself, my dad, who fought the Nazis in World War II, spent 4 years in a Nazi prisoner of war camp, and then after the war was over, as an officer in the Yugoslavian Royal Army, he had a decision to make. Does he go back to the country he came from, the country where he saw his life unfolding, the place he had his dreams and hopes, everything he thought about where his future was going to be was in that place? Or does he decide to build a new life someplace else? And for my dad and millions of others like him with these long and hard to pronounce last names, not unlike Anastasia's last name, my dad decided he didn't want to go to a place that wasn't free. He didn't want to live under communism. And so he waited for 3 more years in a refugee camp. And then in 1948, the United States Congress, where 50 years, less than 50 years later, his youngest son, me, would be one day become a member of, passed a law called the Displaced Persons Act, which permitted my father and millions of others like him with these long and hard to pronounce last names a chance to come to America. And he started out with nothing, didn't have a penny in his pocket, didn't speak a word of English, but he had big hopes and dreams, and he saw in America the special uniqueness of a place separated by 2 oceans that attracts people from across the world because we're free. A place where you can say what you want, express what you want, think the way you want to think, where you can worship as you want, and a land of opportunity where if you work hard and you're willing to sacrifice, you can build a better life for your family. You can give your kids opportunities that you wouldn't have yourself. I have lived the American dream. I grew up to become the governor of the 5th biggest state in America because of the hard work and sacrifice of both of my parents. My mother was a working person like my dad. My dad came here, had to start new, worked in a factory just about all his life. Worked at the Finkel Steel Company in Chicago. And then when he was 63 years old, my dad felt he could make more money for his family. He decided to leave that job at the Finkel Steel Company and went up to Alaska to work up on the Alaskan pipeline, right about the time that Sarah Palin was turning about 10. And he went up there to essentially be a janitor, 7 days a week, 70 hours a week he worked, 10 hours a day, cleaning rooms and places as they were building that pipeline. And it was an opportunity for my dad to make more money so he can build, provide the money necessary to send me to college and give me a chance to have opportunities he didn't have. My mother was a ticket agent for the Chicago Transit Authority, passing out transfers at the subway stations. They never owned a home, didn't drive a fancy car, had an old car. Hardly ever went out to restaurants. That was a big deal for us. You go to the restaurant, your mother would make sure you ate everything on the table and on the plate because this was costing us money, son. But everything they did was about sacrificing to give their kids, my older brother and me, a chance to live the American dream. And their hard work and sacrifice paid off because I went on to become the governor of Illinois and have a chance to be able to know what it's like to be in the peaks of a strong position where you can actually achieve things and do things that make a difference in the lives of people. Now, some people might say, well, then you've taken a hard fall. You were up there real high and now you came down real low. And if those who might say that and think that would be right, it is true. And in some respects, what we've had to deal with, my wife and I and my children, is not something I would wish on anybody. And yet this is, in some respects, the nature of the political system today in America. You go out and you try to do the best you can, you fight the entrenched interests, and then something happens to you. It's all taken away because you've been accused falsely of things that you didn't do. False accusations. Winston Churchill said that a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. And that's what happened to me. And for the past 2.5 years, we've been scratching and crawling, fighting to try to get the truth out, to try to let you all know and let your parents know that what they said isn't so. I didn't do or think about doing or attempt to do any of the things that were said about me. And this has been a long and it's been an arduous journey to fight back against powerful forces and to fight back against the very sorts of things that Anastasia's parents decided to leave. The kinds of things my dad refused to be a part of. That's why he did what he did in World War II. It's why he came to America to live in a free country. And that's what this struggle has been about for me and my whole family. Not just for me and my wife and my 2 little girls, but for my brother and others who've known me, who worked with me, who've also been subjected to this sort of thing that's sort of happened. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm happy to answer your questions, and I'll be happy to do the best I can to answer any question you want to ask me about that, about politics, how it works, insights on anything, even my mock draft for the NFL draft on April 28th. And I predict right now, for those of you who are following it, I think the Panthers are going to take Blaine Gabbert, number 1. I think the Denver Broncos are going to take Marcel Darius from Alabama, number 2. And then if you want to know more about my mock draft, I'll post it on my website. Anastasia talked about a little bit of what I've been doing over the last couple of years. I did write a book about some of my experiences and some of what this case is about. Have I lost you on the microphone? Can you guys still hear me? You can hear me? That's an interesting experience. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I went through 2 boxes of crayons to write that book, but the book has been written, and it's a truthful account of some of the things that have happened since all this has occurred to us. I am facing what I have said from the beginning are trumped-up charges, and because of those trumped-up charges, I've had, out of necessity, to take a job from Donald Trump and get fired by Donald Trump. That's a different kind of experience, not something that I ever expected I'd ever have to do, though I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding that. But before we go to the questions, I'd just like to tell you how important it is for you all to stay involved, to be more active than you even are now in the political system. Your organization is the Junior Statesmen of America. You're our future. You're going to get involved, hopefully, in politics and in government. And when I think about what's happened to us and the struggles that my family's had to gone through, my 2 little girls and the sorts of things that have happened to them because of all this dramatic change and the things that I've had to face and I'm still facing and still dealing with, it would be disingenuous and not exactly truthful of me if I told you that I have dreams and hopes and aspirations that my daughters, my older daughter who's 14, a teenager, and my little one Annie, who's going to turn 8 on Tuesday, that I'd like them to be in politics. I wouldn't. As a father who loves his kids and wants them to be happy and wants them to be safe and wants them to be secure, it would not be my first choice for them to get into politics. But this isn't something that I just discovered over the last couple of years since this has happened to us. Having been in the political process, it can become somewhat disillusioning and disheartening sometimes. The incredible cynicism, the amazing sense of entitlement by a lot of political figures, the loss of connection with real ordinary people because they've been in the business so long that they forget who they're supposed to represent. And little by little, over time, those places of government, whether it be Springfield, the state capital in Illinois, or Washington, D.C., where I served for 6 years as a congressman, it becomes less and less about the people back home who sent you there to do their work, and more about what I call the political industrial complex, the entrenched interests that work in and around government, the professional staffers. Congressmen and senators come and go, but those staffers are there. Congressmen and senators come and go, but the lobbyists are there. Congressmen and senators come and go, and then they become lobbyists. In fact, on the prescription drug bill back in 2005 in Washington, a bill that would allow your grandparents to be able to have a free market for their medicines because the medicines are too expensive that they pay for, and they can't afford it, and so they ration their medicines. They have to decide whether they can afford their groceries or whether they can afford the medicines their doctors say they have to take for their health. On that bill, a bill that would allow American citizens to go to Canada to be able to get the same medicines made by the exact same companies that you make here, only you can go to Canada and get it for half the price. In most everything else, they call that free trade, but somehow when it comes to medicines that are necessities for people, that somehow there's a closed market. They won't allow it to happen. There were more lobbyists from the pharmaceutical industry in Washington, D.C. than there were members of Congress. 435 U.S. congressmen and 100 senators. That's 535 men and women who are elected by the people to represent all of you from every part of our country. And yet there were more lobbyists on just that bill trying to keep us from being able to import safe and affordable prescription medicines from Canada, to keep it from happening, because the big drug companies like the fact that they can charge your grandparents or your parents or even you more for medicines than what the market would bear if it was open and free and competitive. That's just one example of how the process works and how cynical it is. And why are you important in this? Because historically, if you look at America, It's young people that make the difference. It's young people that change the system. It's young people who inject a new sense of enthusiasm and a necessary idealism that's been lost on the men and women, the grown-ups who've been in the process for too long. It doesn't happen overnight. Most of the people who are elected to office in America, congressmen, senators, governors, mayors, state lawmakers, Chicago aldermen, city councilmen out here in DuPage County, township committeemen, all the rest, I believe genuinely want to try to do what's right, try to do the best thing they can. But then they become part of a process. And I can tell you from firsthand experience as a congressman and as a governor at the state level and as a lawmaker at the state level, what ultimately happens, and it doesn't take long, is that you get a young person getting elected to an office, and then he or she goes down to Springfield, or they go to Washington, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, determined to change the world. And then they see how the system works and how entrenched it is. And little by little, because there tends to be a bit of a herd mentality, it's safer when you do what everybody else does, and it's sort of just accepted. This is how it's operated and how business works down there. Little by little, those grand ideas, those big thoughts, the determination that really changed things just goes away.